Welcome to our class on Ahavas Chesed. I have reoriented myself, apparently. YouTube moved the button for changing the orientation on the on the device. So, Baruch Hashem, Chasdei Hashem, I was able to find it. Really, the truth is, you just poke around and you find the thing that you were doing before, and then you just move it somewhere else. Same problem with Zoom and all the other things. It works well until they move it somewhere you can't find it, and you figure you just can't use those features anymore. Speaking of features, today we're going to feature Section 22 and Section 24 because they are particularly important, but also particularly short, not long enough to do one class in either one of them, but 23, oddly enough, is long enough to fit into the shear. So we're going to do that breakdown today. We're going to do 22 first, and then we'll skip to 24. We'll ignore the fact that it says you're done, but then next week we'll do 23. So that's why I was pointing out that we'll be finished with the sefer relatively quickly. We are almost done. Today we're going to talk about types of chesed, types of gemilas chesed, kindness that can be done by lending out your utensils, lending out your stuff, things that basically ways in which you can do chesed, not necessarily just with money or with your person. Because in the previous chapters, the Ahavas Time says, we talked about lending money. How about lending stuff, lending utensils? For this is also a mitzvah, he says. And this comes from that place of chesed that we have in ourselves. And he quotes the Gemara in Sukkah. This is 49b. It says, Tzedakah b'mamoinai, gemilos chasadim ben begufoi ben b'mamoinai. You can do a lot of nice things. You can do charity with your money, and you can give people kindness, both with your person and with your money. Rashi says, what does that mean? Well, I could give you some money, and I could give you some utensils, or I could have you use an animal, and that is the mitzvah to lend it out. And especially, the Ahavas Chaim points out over here, if there's some type of additional benefit that they could accrue through the use of those objects that you are giving to them, basically gratis. You're not charging them for it. They're not being charged a rental fee, okay? But you are loaning it to them with the expectation of it being returned in working order. And we mentioned previously that even giving somebody something to help them improve their lifestyle is considered the mitzvah of hachazak the boy, which we quoted last time from the pasuk in Leviticus 25:35. And this type of chesed, the Ahavas Chaim continues, is one that can be done from anyone, because everybody has something that they could lend to something else. It's probably the easiest way to look at it. You could lend somebody a sifter. You could lend somebody a plate. You could lend them any type of other utensils in the house. Or you could give them a fork. You can, or you could, you could also help them clean out, a water pit, something like that, so things like that. So these are all examples of how you could do chesed. And the rabbis say in the Talmud that Lavan was punished significantly. Okay. I'm sorry. Not Lavan Harami. It's talking about the mitzvah tzitzis over here. He says the mitzvah tzitzis. It says that one is worse off not wearing the white strands than they are from wearing the blue strands. That's what the word Lavan, and I didn't mention that it's tzitzis. Now I see where he's quoting from in the Talmud. I see he's talking about tzitzis. So you're not wearing one of them. So if you're skipping out on the blue strand, that's one type of punishment. If you're skipping out on the white strand, that's another type. So it's one thing to skip out on the blue strings. They're very expensive. Not everybody can afford them. But white strings,
Anybody can get white strings. Anyone can get silence.
what is that? $15, $20? You can do a mitzvah all the time, every day, for years. So too, in our case, you could be requested from you to give something to any person in need. So why wouldn't you lend them something? Maybe you can lend them some money, okay? Like 100 dinar, he says over here. Maybe because we can use them to help support himself, like for groceries. How much the more so if it's something slight that you could even give it to them and benefit them. Something like a utensil. But you'd be lazy not doing it. Imagine what the loss would be. So that's what the comparison is. So with a simple thing like this, where you could provide somebody with a very simple favor, you could benefit somebody else with a very simple thing, whether you're poor, and especially if you're rich, and you're asking for something quite significant, that all of these things are meant to be lent out as part of our own discovery of the kindness that we can extend to others. So if a poor person asks for something, the requirement becomes even more significant, and the obligation becomes even greater to lend it to him. Because maybe he doesn't have any other way of getting it. Maybe the stores are closed. Maybe it's hard to get. And we said that in the first chapter, in the very first chapter, we're talking about getting loans. In the third halacha over there, he says you should be able to give them something so small to be able to help them make a difference. You should be able to do it. And some people don't even want to do this because, they want to make sure that they always have these utensils available to them. I have to have my pizza cutter here, my watermelon baller has to be here because I'm in need of watermelon balls at all times, right? Come on. These type of people who says Ahavas Chaim, they are very stingy and have an ayin hara in many cases on them, on others and on themselves. They have a very narrow look at how they could benefit others. And it's such a terrible personality trait to maintain as well. And we said that when we talked about those things that detracted from this in chapter 10, there's so many bad personality traits that will just lead you to further punishment down the line. Take a look at that. So even people who aren't really stingy themselves, but they don't like to give stuff out because they don't want to have to keep track of it, and they're lazy, Like, can I borrow your this? I don't want to go to the kitchen to go get it. And for every other reason, just don't want to do it, and they don't know how good this could be just to lend you something, and it could be so valuable for you. Doing a small thing, even for the slightest bit of benefit to you, would be such a benefit overall to the trait of chesed that you could inject into all of your dealings. And people should be so happy that Hashem has given them the opportunity to do this good and to benefit others and to increase that chesed trait to others. And everything that we've talked about here, says the Ahavas Chaim, about lending out your stuff, you're lending out your items, that is for things that are sort of like temporary things. For meals, for things that are like chaye nefesh, things that that keep you sustained. How much a bigger mitzvah it is to lend a book to a friend to learn from it. And that's something that he could keep with him forever. And the merits of that charity you've extended to him could go on even longer because you've given him something that he could learn and learn forever. And he quotes another drasha of Chazal. This is in Ksubos 50a, where it says that a person collects all their wealth in their house, but the charity goes on forever. Charity just keeps on getting moved around. And they say this is someone who writes books and lends them to others. And this is part of the mitzvah of strengthening Torah amongst others. And so therefore a person they like accrue even more mitzvah points by having people learn Torah with them. In the third section of it, he says there are those people who won't do that. Why? Because there's a certain type. They have a certain type of negativity around them, or there's a little bit of hatred that they don't like the fact that people just won't do the same thing for them. They have this vengeful, spiteful, and when someone refuses to do to others because of what they're concerned that they'll do to them, there's a prohibition in the Torah. This is in the book of Leviticus, Vayikra 19:18. Lo si kam v'lo si tores b'nei amecha. Be neither vengeful nor spiteful. Don't deal with that. We already explained this in chapter 4 what it means. Don't say I have it, don't lend it, or I don't have it when you do have it. You should always consider about yourself when these small moments come along and you choose them to pick a fight, not only with that person but also with Hashem. Think about how that affects your speech and your actions. And in those cases, would you like Hashem to be spiteful and vengeful as well? But Hashem is not one who does that. Hashem is someone who wants you, just like himself, wants to benefit others and sustain them. And so that's what you should be doing to your friend as well. And you could even say, that's what when it says to not be spiteful, it attaches to it, Hashem. The reason why you should not be vengeful and spiteful is because it blocks this ability to connect with people through love and kindness. And that's not how you want to do that. We don't want you to be somebody who constantly is guarding hatred in your heart. Okay? And so that's why the only thing that should be guarded eternally should be chesed, which is what Hashem keeps close. And so therefore, in conclusion in this chapter, this was very short, when we talked about lending out some of your items, we're going to talk about the lender yourself, that you should not, make too many conditions or to change the conditions under which a person could actually borrow the item. And, you shouldn't put too many conditions on it. Also, the person asking to borrow it, the shoel, should not try to use the object for anything other than what the person who lent it to you intended you to use it. If you change any of the conditions or violate the terms of your borrowing of this item, as a shoel, as someone making the request, as a borrower, you are now going from borrower to thief. Why? Because it only is meant to be used for the task for which you have requested it to be used. Okay, and you shouldn't think to use it for longer than you've been given permission to use it for. And in a case where you decide to just sort of help yourself with somebody's objects, that's not cool. That is a shoel shalom midas, and that person is also a thief. And those laws are explained in Choshen Mishpat 341 and 359. So that person is not allowed to do that. Also, a person who is asking to borrow items, you cannot give it to somebody else, even in the middle of your renting it, and so much more. You can't lend it to somebody else when you are expected to give it back. So when you're expected to give it back, you should give it back, especially after you've completed the time for lending it out. And he says, unfortunately, people are not so careful with this. They're very lazy about going to return it, and then they forget about it, and the owner forgets about it. He doesn't know to whom he lent it, and now he's looking for it, And then also because everyone's being lazy when the person borrowing it, now it's broken, and now since you weren't taking good care of it, now you're gonna have to pay him back for it. But you were poor, which is why you borrowed it out to begin with. And these are all things that it's like a comedy of errors, So I mean, he's going to person was not want to lend it out to begin with if he knew you were going to simply be lazy about it and break it. And especially if he's worried that you're not going to pay them back, no one has to give something out if they're worried that you're going to steal it. And the Ahavas Chessed quotes the Gemara. He says that if you continue to hold on to the item beyond the period of the request, you're still required to take care of it, even though you need to return it.
So, and just like you are if you are in the middle of using it. So now when you don't return it, you're not allowed to use it anymore. Okay? But even if this thing breaks accidentally, since you went ahead and were using it, if it breaks, you're responsible for it. And so to afterward as well. So a person should be very careful about their conduct, that when you are asking for something from somebody else and you're going to use it for a specific purpose, return it when you're done and don't keep it by you. Such a simple, thoughtful idea. And I saw there was a question over here. Lending items, tools, equipment, vessels for immediate need is an immediate help, even better than money, sort of like giving food ready to eat. Yeah, but so a good example of that would be, can I borrow your knife to cut my vegetables? A knife and a cutting board. Right? Sometimes, just maybe you're somewhere you didn't have a knife and a cutting board. You're not in your kitchen. You're traveling. So the point is exactly, some of these things can become an immediate need as well. I can't eat a giant, head of lettuce. I can't eat a whole chicken. I guess you could eat, just pick the whole chicken, shove it in your mouth. Anyway, make it difficult. So that, as we say, is that. Let's go to section 24 now. We'll talk about the obligation to paying back your loans. So we've talked about how important it is to take loans as a mitzvah, which is what section 23 is about, but we've been talking about it anyway for almost the entire book anyway. So we're going to talk about how important it is to pay it back. So the rabbis say in the Talmud, this is in Ksubis 86a, that paying back a loan is a mitzvah. And we talked about this already. And you're not allowed to push it off, and you're not allowed to try to exempt yourself on it, just like sukkah and shofar and tefillin. It's a mitzvah. You've got to pay it back. And the rabbis say further in the Talmud, this is from Bava Metzia 113b, that the person who is owed the money has to go ahead and organize a court to collect. Okay? So if you don't pay up on your own and the lender is trying to get the money from you, then you're going to have to put together a court. You're going to have to, basically summon a court to collect, or something that's got a court. And, and basically when you're coming to collect, you have to leave him enough money so that way he can buy food for 30 days and have clothes for the rest of the year. And you also can't take the things that he needs for work and things too, like some of the other items in his books and some of his property. You can sell all of those things in order to pay off the chov and the obligation for the money, and you don't leave money even for his wife and children, because he went ahead and basically obligated himself to pay for this loan. So it's really, you got to pay it up. And someone who tries to escape paying the loan, who, however strong and tough he thinks he is violating a Torah prohibition. It's because the Torah prohibition is lo shok es reyacha, which is from Vayikra. It's Yud Tes Yud Gimel, chapter 19, verse 13. And you shouldn't try to get away from it. So what is this law of Eshek? Eshek is he's bringing down, the Ahavas Chaim says, is from Shin Nun Tes, which we mentioned about the laws of theft. And this is the 8th halacha in that section. So what is it? Someone who has their friend's money in their possession via consent, and they ask you for it, and you refuse to return the money. Okay? So it's there because you're hired for something, you want the money, he wants the money back, and you can't get your money back. That's the Torah prohibition. And so the rabbis of Talmud further say that 4 people are considered wicked. And one of them is who borrows and does not pay back. As it says, a bad person is someone who borrows and doesn't pay back. And that's in Tehillim. In the book of Psalms, 37:21. Right? That's what it is. A wicked person will borrow and not repay. So a person should be that much more embarrassed about themselves that they know they have the ability to pay back, and they refuse to pay back. And they cause themselves to be wicked. Okay, so you should know that when you call somebody wicked, even between the two of you just fighting, and you don't feel any kind of reflex on it, like, oh, that's embarrassing to be called that. So the person, you would think, would become quite angry and disturbed by being called this. And so too that he causes himself to become recognized as a wicked person. And so that exposes, and furthermore, that exposes you to all of the embarrassment and all of the feelings of worthlessness that will come as a result of being labeled one, especially when it comes to the future times. That if a person becomes known as the one who doesn't pay, that you're going to have all these opportunities where you could be exposed to all of this holiness in the future worlds, but yet you were more concerned about running away and fleeing from taking responsibility for your loans, and instead you're going to become announced and exposed as the Russia. And even if you try to sort of doll yourself up, make yourself more appealing to the people around you, like you didn't do anything wrong, before Hashem knows what it is that you're doing wrong. He knows your game. And so the rabbis say in Ahavas, this is chapter 2, number 13, that a person should not expose themselves to or consider themselves to be wicked. Okay, especially how much more so if they are learned, and even more so, says the Ahavas Chaim, if there's a chil Hashem that comes as a result of this. Okay, and it's because we're told not to do that. And that's probably the worst thing that you could do. So imagine how this could spiral out of control. Okay, so we even see furthermore that, let's say you take a loan. This is a halacha in Choshen Mishpat. This is 97:4. One may not borrow money to then take the loan and to then blow it on random stuff, or even to wantonly get rid of it. And so far will it be gone, and all your money be gone, that a person can't come and collect your money. And if you do this, you're called wicked. So much the more so when you have money and you don't want to pay back. It's even worse. And a person should also know that other people's money that is left in your control, okay, and it doesn't go anywhere. Okay, so that a person will find that if they are trying to make themselves wealthier and are doing it not unjustly, there's a term known as unjust enrichment, right? When you use somebody's property incorrectly and you try to you improve it, right? There's a legal precedent for that, not for the money, but when you do work on someone's property without their permission, okay, we call that in halacha hayord l'toch sadeh chavero. Okay, if you go into the property and then try to benefit from it, that a person such as this, they are going to cost themselves years of their lives, and a person will be totally embarrassed to have this happen to them, especially with trying to save what is they have left. And they say further in the words of Chazal in Derech Eretz Zutra, it says, if someone takes something that doesn't belong to you, something will be taken from you. And this is what it means about guarding people's money, is included in the warning that a person will be informed of all the good things that will happen to them, and that's what Hashem will look for you, and the opposite as well, because these are all part of actual experiences of judgment and good things to be done. A person should be very careful to do the right thing and to avoid doing anything crooked, especially to their friend. And in the very first chapter, we talked about this in great detail. And a person who is very careful to follow the ways of justice and to use good judgment, these people will definitely see the redemption planned for them by Hashem for all of the Jewish people. Because it says in the prophet Isaiah, this is in chapter 56, number 1, Shamru mishpat ve'asu tzedakah, ki krava Yeshua silavo, v'tzid kasi lihi galos. We say this frequently on fast days, that a person who does justice and does charity will certainly see a redemption from these things, and will see the charity that comes from Hashem. And we're going to talk more about this, he says, in another work called Swas Tamim. We will not be covering it today. However, we have almost finished the entire book. We will come back next week into section 23, which is a little bit of a longer section, which is going to talk even further about loans. This section about loans, even though we've talked about it, at length, tremendously at length, about how loans play into the feature of chesed, we are going to talk about, in this section, how the mitzvah of the loan plays out as an actual mitzvah. Okay? So the lending itself as a function, as a mitzvah function, different than tzedakah itself. So we've been talking around it, and next time we're going to actually talk about it. And then we'll be completely finished with part 2. We'll move on to the much anticipated part 3. Okay, thank you everyone for coming out. Have a wonderful day.